You're listening to
And such a short amount of time to do it in. We were really
a Mamma Mia podcast.
Hi there and welcome to Cancelled. It's a podcast about who's in, who's out and who cares. I'm Jessie Stevens.
And I'm Claire Stevens.
You panicked. Did you panic?
I did. I'm a writer and editor, and I would just like to share something about me, which is that I have always had a soft spot for Scott Disick, despite knowing he is a bad person.
It's an interesting character flaw because it's not what you'd expect.
No.
And yet every now and then I remember Claire will defend that man to the death.
I think he's quite funny.
I have a fun fact about Oh, it's not really about myself. I didn't really understand the brief.
Okay.
It's about cauliflower. I have an unpopular opinion.
Uh-huh.
I thought that's what we were doing.
No.
My unpopular opinion is that no one actually likes cauliflower. Like they'll say, oh, let's get cauliflower, as though they like vegetables, but really they just want cheese.
I like cauliflower.
No, you don't. You just like whatever it's marinated in.
Not relevant. But thank you for your input. Together, we have created, but definitely not copyrighted, the Cancelled Courtroom, where we say, okay, just like murder is more wrong than, say, getting a parking ticket, some celebrity crimes are more naughty than others, and therefore you need a sentence that fits the charge. Today, we're doing one of the biggest cancelled stories of the last few years, Ellen DeGeneres.
And today I have an announcement to make. Today, I am announcing that next season, season 19, is going to be my last season.
Television can be all smoke and mirrors, can't it? But all of this controversy recently has it given viewers an insight into the real Ellen, and she's sort of not as nice as everyone thinks?
18 years ago, on the very first show, I said this was going to be a relationship, and we are going to continue that relationship even when this show ends, but not in this house, because you know I love to move.
We've had so many people request this. I reckon this is the number one
Most requested
episode. First, I'm going to talk a bit about what triggered her cancellation and how that unfolded. Then we'll do a bit of a retroactive look at her career and provide a little bit of context. Interestingly, everything started with Ellen a little bit shooting herself in the foot. In 2018, Ellen was known as one of the most likeable people in Hollywood. That was her shtick, and her catchphrase was "be kind." There had been very vague rumours floating around about her, where every now and then somebody would tell a story about her being rude, but nothing would stick.
And I feel like that's a bit of a vibe. Whenever anyone gets popular, it's like, I met them at the airport and they said, fuck you, I hate you.
Yeah, and you're like, that's not credible. That's okay. But then in December 2018, an article was published in the New York Times, and the headline was, Ellen DeGeneres is not as nice as you think.
Great headline.
Oh,
click.
click. But it wasn't a hit piece. It was a profile piece. It was an interview with Ellen. And it was to promote her new Netflix special at the time called Relatable.
I remember that.
Yeah, I didn't watch the whole thing, but I did watch the trailer for it and I saw clips. And in it, she was basically saying that people often conflate her persona on the Ellen DeGeneres show with who she is as a person. And in the article, it talks about how she was sick of dancing. Remember how she always danced at the beginning?
That's what I was going to say, is that everyone thinks it's the real Ellen. And I'm like, so if Ellen's walking around a supermarket like a Coles and they start playing the Coles song, how does that go? Down, down, the prices are down. Like, for example, she doesn't start like straddling a coffee table and start just grooving to it.
Well, she said that she would be out and people would say, can I get a selfie? And she'd take a selfie with them and they would look at her disappointed and say, why aren't you dancing? But it's like, was she meant to start dancing? How embarrassing.
Yes, and tell a joke.
So she actually, I didn't realise this, but she, for like 2 years, like up until now, she hasn't been dancing. She quit dancing at the beginning of the show because she didn't like it anymore.
Is it a coincidence that we appear to have stopped watching as soon as she stopped dancing?
I know. I think it had a
did
direct
enjoy the dancing.
I remember Mum getting really mad. Mum watching it and saying she can't even dance. And I was like, that's
the point.
She's
and
doing
it was an audience full of 40, 50-something-year-old women who also couldn't dance, who were having a groove, and they do it. And she had one move. I'm doing it now, but you can't really see it.
Yeah.
She had one move, and she'd kind of go around, and that's what she'd do. She'd go around the coffee table, and then she'd hold either sides of her couch,
and she'd swing on it, and then she'd drop. It was great.
Music cut.
Yes. So in this article, it says that in person, she's more blunt, introspective, and interesting than she is on the show, willing to express mild irritation that might seem off-key in front of a national audience. In her comedy special, she presents herself very tongue-in-cheek as aloof and indifferent and a bit stuck in a privileged bubble. So she cracks a whole lot of jokes about her wealth. And she's basically trying to be authentic in the new life that she's carved for herself. And I have always found this interesting, that the weird thing about fame is that people get famous by being authentic and relatable. But when you become famous, you're not authentic or relatable.
No.
And the thing people hate is when you pretend to be those things. So,
But they also hate when they realise you're not. Because it's like,
Exactly.
keep doing what you've always done by telling jokes about the world that are relatable to the everyday person, even though you no longer occupy that world.
yeah. And so people got really annoyed that she no longer was kind of grounded, but they were the jokes she was making. Like, she opens the comedy special by saying,
A friend of mine was at my house, and I told him I'm going to do stand-up again. And he said, really? And I said, yeah, I was hoping for more of a really? And he said, well, do you think you're still relatable? Just then, Batu, my butler, stepped into the library.
and I'm like, that's funny. That's a funny, like, yes, you're acknowledging that your life has changed and you're no longer relatable. So she says in this New York Times piece that the talk show is part of her, but she's also playing a character of a talk show host. And there's a tiny bit of difference. And she acknowledges that she used to make jokes about, food on aeroplanes, and that she can't do that anymore because it's just not who she is and it's not the life she experiences.
Because she's flying first class.
I think so. But basically, she's being interviewed in the piece, and there's little lines about a chef delivering her a drink, how Conan O'Brien lives down the road. There's a little bit of an acknowledgement of anonymous complaints that she's not always nice to those she works with. And she says that it bugs her because it's an outright lie and that she wants everybody to have fun and be proud of where they work. But the interesting thing is people have said that this piece kind of pierced the illusion of Ellen, and what you're never meant to do as an entertainer is give up what your shtick is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so you can't, if you're Amy Schumer, you're not allowed to admit that you're playing a ditzy person,
A hot mess.
a hot mess ditzy person. You are meant to be a hot mess. Do you know what I mean?
That's so true.
So people were like, she's let us see beyond the curtain, and it was
we got scared.
confusing.
Like Oz.
yeah.
Like the Wizard of Oz.
Exactly. So that interview put a bit of a spotlight on her, and it was a bit of foreshadowing. If I'm going to go year 12 English, there was some foreshadowing.
Was there any pathetic fallacy?
Uh,
Did it rain?
I don't
when
think it
her
was
life
raining.
fell apart?
no. Although Portia did have an accident during the interview, and she was injured quite badly. Anyway.
Feels
That's-
like more foreshadowing.
Yeah. But a lot of this was triggered by the Dakota Johnson interview. Almost a year later, so now it's November 2019, Dakota Johnson appears on Ellen.
You happy belated birthday. When was your birthday?
It was October 4th.
October 4th. You turned 30.
I did.
And how was the party? I wasn't invited.
Actually, no, that's not the truth, Ellen. You were invited. Last time I was on the show, last year, you gave me a bunch of about not inviting you, but I didn't even know you wanted to be invited.
Well, who
'Cause I
doesn't
didn't
want to
even
be
know you-
invited to a party?
Well, I didn't even know you liked me.
Of course I like you. You knew I liked you.
Okay, she must not have known, because saying that to like people in the office or like people that you're only loosely connected to is like, it's like a base level joke. Right?
Like, thanks for the invite.
Thanks for the invite. That's what you
Yeah.
always say. How awkward if they were like, no, you were invited, you just never replied.
And you're like, I'm sorry.
I was busy. I wouldn't have wanted to come.
No. But the uncomfortable thing is, so Ellen's like, I didn't get an invite. And Dakota Johnson is like, yes, you did. And then she confirms with the other crew on the stage that Ellen did get an invite. But what nobody shows, everybody shows that 30 seconds where Dakota's like, that's not true, Ellen. And it seems really serious.
Yeah.
But they don't show that bloody a minute later they confirm that Ellen was invited and she goes, oh, I remember that. Thank you. Like, that's not good television, apparently. But the question is, I mean, it's twofold. One, why did Ellen lie about not being invited?
I think, well, she probably just forgot, right?
No, it's malicious because Ellen's pretending to be nice. And two, where was Ellen that she wasn't at Dakota's party? And I guess from Dakota's perspective, it would be embarrassing being like, Ellen's coming. And then she doesn't come.
And then she doesn't show up. It's like, oh, who's going? And you're like, oh, Jessica, Melissa, Ellen DeGeneres. And it's like, what? I invited Ellen DeGeneres. She's a really good friend. And then everyone just watches the door all day and then Ellen doesn't even show up after not replying.
So the question about where Ellen was is a bit awkward. Because the day after the party, we don't know where she was on the day of the actual party. She could have been bloody donating to charity, who knows, but that's not important. The day after the party, she was spotted in Texas hanging out with a low-key man named George W. Bush. Okay? They were going to a Dallas Cowboys game together. And it's awkward because George Bush arguably started a war. Ellen's at a game with George Bush and people are annoyed because he didn't support LGBT policies. He was really bad with support after Hurricane Katrina. He's not the guy. He's not the guy you want to be seen with when you didn't go to Dakota's party. So for a lot of people, it was like, she's lying and she was hanging out with a not very nice man over here. Then comes the Twitter thread. Jessie, you never want that line in your life. Oh, there's a Twitter thread. Okay.
In my
I'll
Wikipedia,
vomit.
in my Wikipedia bio, what I don't want is like early years education Twitter thread.
controversy.
That's not what I want. And then outbound links to how it unfolded.
A few months later, it's March 2020. So people have had a lot of time. It's a pandemic. And people have had a lot of time to watch and rewatch Dakota Johnson talking about her birthday party. And so a man named Kevin T. Porter tweets this. Right now, we all need a little kindness. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, it is. There's a virus.
Full stop. Share.
You know, like Ellen DeGeneres always talks about. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Be kind.
She's also notoriously one of the meanest people alive.
Oh.
So this man says, respond to this with the most insane stories you've heard about Ellen being mean, and I'll match everyone with $2 to the LA Food Bank. All right? So he's basically saying, everybody, let's pile on, and I will pay for you to pile on. This is the part I think is the most interesting. It didn't raise enough. It didn't raise enough. How much do you think? Actually, no, because it raised a fine amount, but not enough to ruin Ellen DeGeneres' career. It only raised $600.
That's not enough.
No.
That's not an act of philanthropy. It's an act of meanness.
Yes.
Nastiness.
Kevin.
I'm not a liar, but I feel compelled to make up a story about that to help the hungry. To go, I met Ellen once. She told me I had stupid face, ugly girl, la 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 la, and then she kicked me in the shin.
Hashtag feed the homeless.
Hashtag feed the homeless. Hashtag retweet. Because I want to get in an article or something.
A couple of days later, Kevin tweeted, well, this got out of hand. It's now hard to tell which stories are real or not.
Oh.
I think that was a problem from the beginning. But anyway, so I've rounded up to $300 and donated $600. I mean, it was always going to be impossible to know which stories are real, given that there were no checks or balances. Okay, so...
What were some of the stories in the Twitter thread?
I've obviously got them. I want to read you my favourite.
Okay, read some of your favourites.
Okay, this
and
is
then
this
what
is
we'll
my
do
favourite.
is we'll say true or false.
Okay.
What is a court of law for? If not, to fact-check tweets.
Yes. Okay, well, I'm entering this into evidence, and I'd like it on the record that Kevin did respond to this one and say, sounds a bit exaggerated, mate.
Okay.
One time I saw her at a restaurant in... at a restaurant in LA. The waiter was serving the table next to her. He bumped into her by accident when putting down their food, and she stood up and pushed him and pushed his head into the bowl of hot soup he had just put down on the table. 2nd-degree burns. That has 1.5k likes. Jessie, true or false?
That's a crime. She'd have been arrested.
That person's joking.
And
That's like how brothers
hilarious.
Jessie, you want to know the Twitter user's name? Mrs. Mrs. Butthole. So you know it's
Butthole
true.
Sounds legit.
You know it's true. Okay.
All right. I don't think that happened.
Someone with a blue tick says this. She has a sensitive nose, so everyone must chew gum from a bowl outside her office before talking to her, and if she thinks you smell that day, you have to go home and shower. Maybe. Do you know what I mean? Like, maybe.
Yeah.
Is it criminal?
No. But like, you stink. So who's the criminal in this situation?
Okay.
Any others?
Any others? Are you kidding? Okay. I once worked at Warner Brothers. One day I was in the elevator and Ellen and her entourage came in. Naturally, I held it for her and asked her what floor she was getting on. Her assistant answered 3rd floor. 30 minutes later, I got a call from my boss saying I was fired because I was harassing her. I just don't know.
Or that person omitted the part
where he was harassing her.
where he
Maybe.
harassed her and asked her too many questions.
A lot of them are along the lines of this. My friend wrote for the Ellen show, which, by the way, is hearsay. My friend. Okay?
That's hearsay.
The courts don't like hearsay. Put that on the record. My friend wrote for the Ellen show for 2 years and told me Ellen didn't greet her once. In fact, upon employment, staff were told they weren't allowed to talk to her. There are several that say that.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, if everyone who meets her expects her to dance, at some point you've just got to be like, no more new people.
No.
No more greetings.
And you expect me to be nice and give you money.
When I'm expected to be nice on the TV for, 2 hours a day or something?
Very exhausting. There's some of the tweets. Ellen crew members said, hey, this one is a bit more serious. They were annoyed because the pandemic hits and they were told nothing about the status of their working hours or pay or inquiries about their mental and physical health. They were told their pay would be reduced, and then Ellen hired a non-union company to tape the show from her home. So a bit of a dick move during the pandemic. Then she's on her show. Remember she filmed from her lounge room?
Yeah.
In an opening monologue, she referred to being in lockdown as like being in jail.
One thing that I've learned from being in quarantine is that people, this is like being in jail is what it is. It's mostly because I've been wearing the same clothes for 10 days and everyone in here is gay.
That's a little, sort of jokes on her.
Yeah.
I think that's a decent
By
joke.
definition, I think in terms of the court, I'm going to admit that as a joke.
You do.
Not a serious claim that she was in jail.
No.
Which these people would disagree with. Here are a couple of tweets in response to that. One journalist from Variety tweeted,
Okay, that journalist needs a project. that isn't.
"What a
this.
great look for Ellen as thousands of people sit in actual jail cells just hoping for the best without soap and basic protections." Somebody else tweeted, "Being a privileged, super wealthy white lady stuck in a mansion is not like jail. This comparison is not funny. It is disgusting."
I'm glad that they told Ellen that, because when she had that man's head in the soup, she was going, and I hate people in jail.
Yeah.
And I think I should kick them while they're down.
Yes. This is another tweet. "Hey, The Ellen Show. Prisoners across this country are trapped in 24-hour quarantine in cells that are probably about the size of one of your showers, and others are sleeping 3 feet away from sick inmates, and they're dying. You aren't experiencing anything close to prison." I would like on the record that those people have misinterpreted the tone in that it was a joke. And she didn't stare at the screen crying, saying her home was like jail.
No.
It's like, are we not allowed to joke? Like jail, when people joke about jail,
It's like you're locked in.
but it's like you're joking about the idea of jail, not actual jail. When people refer to jail, They don't mean literal jail or problems with the prison system. No, it's a joke. Then a beauty blogger who was a guest on Ellen said the following. Call me naive, but I kind of expected to be welcomed with confetti cannons. Welcome to the Ellen DeGeneres show. But
That's terrible for the environment.
But instead I was greeted by an angry intern who was a bit overworked.
Welcome
To
ever doing anything in television or radio. People are stressed. They are on a timeline.
It's bizarre, but they are working.
They are. It's in the middle of their workday.
It's not a party.
It's the first time for you. Very exciting day for you. Appreciate that. Not an exciting day for them.
No.
It's 2 p.m. and they're hungry.
Yeah.
Shit, that woman, she wanted Ellen dancing. She came with some music on her phone and she said,
Dance for me, Ellen. Then there were the BuzzFeed reports. So in July, 10 former and 1 current Ellen employees, all speaking anonymously, described a toxic work environment with a culture of racism, fear and intimidation. There was a quote that said, "That be kind bullshit only happens when the cameras are on. It's all for the show." There's a quote in the article that says this. According to former staffers, those who have more likeable personality traits, who are willing to work the 10-plus hour days without complaint, and who actively ignore how managers and senior-level producers treat others, have been given new iPhones, gift cards, and other swag the show keeps on hand from its sponsors. I'm not saying that's not a problem. I am saying that's capitalism.
that is capitalism.
People who shut up and work and don't complain it's not okay.
But it's not Ellen's fault.
That specifically.
This is a classic example of who/what we cancel along the way.
Yeah.
Capitalism.
Capitalism.
Which deserves an
cancellation.
episode
Yes.
of cancelled.
Also overworking.
Yes.
That should be cancelled.
Likability helps in life.
It does. Former employees told BuzzFeed that they'd been fired for taking medical leave, attending family funerals.
That ain't right.
No.
That's wrong.
And one for posting a selfie in the office on her Instagram stories. But the thing is that Ellen didn't feature in the employee complaints.
She's not the HR department.
No.
She's busy limbering up.
Yeah, for the dancing. One employee alleged they were never told never to talk to her, but nobody actually accuses her of being involved in this toxic. Obviously, people say it comes from the top, but she didn't do anything directly to these people. Meanwhile, Australia joins in. A guy named Neil Breen, who was the boss of the Today Show in 2013, said that Ellen came to Australia and was interviewed by Richard Wilkins. Now, from this show, we know it is on the record
that he hogs his contacts.
he hoards his contacts.
He hogs his entertainment contacts. We know this because of a recorded, not recorded, but remembered telephone call where Carl said that man hogs his contacts.
Exactly.
And why did we know it was true? It sounded true.
And it's petty.
Yes.
That's how. This Neil Breen said the producers called us aside and said, okay, this is how it's going to work here. Ellen's going to arrive at 10:15 and she'll be sitting in this chair. And Richard, you'll be sitting in this chair. Neil, no one is to talk to Ellen. You don't talk to her. You don't approach her. You don't look at her. She'll come in, she'll sit down, she'll talk to Richard, and then Ellen will leave.
Since her marriage to Aussie actress Portia de Rossi, we've kind of claimed her as an honorary Australian, and now she's here for the very first time and loving it. I spoke to Ellen in Melbourne yesterday. Ellen,
Richard.
welcome to Australia.
Thank you very much.
You made it.
I finally made it.
Then there's another BuzzFeed report. This time, 47 current and former employees talk.
It's getting silly.
That's a lot. I'd like that on the record. There are allegations of sexual assault against the head writer and executive producer, Keith Lehman, who was accused of groping and propositioning male staff members, and allegations against Ed Glavin for inappropriate touching. But to me, this is the problem. Ellen being mean and the Ellen Show being a toxic workplace are kind of two different things.
Yeah, two different features.
And people focusing on Ellen being rude to strangers in public rather than allegations of sexual assault is a little bit problematic to me.
I agree.
We have real people saying they were really hurt by other real people. But instead, we're listening to Mrs. Butthole, who says that Ellen did a fake thing. And everybody's like,
story though.
Ellen.
Ellen told everyone to harass her staff?
And this is what I find a little bit frustrating about the whole story, because there are these serious complaints and BuzzFeed News publishes the serious complaints, but then BuzzFeed also has these kinds of stories. 15 Ellen moments that now have me side-eyeing hard. 12 more Ellen moments that I can't help but look at differently.
Yeah, that story definitely worked the first time.
15
And that's why
times
they followed up.
celebs snap back at Ellen DeGeneres. And several of these examples, it's just jokes.
Okay.
It's just jokes. So
and
they
if
were
you've done it for as
clearly-
many years as she's done it, you're going to have awkward exchanges with awkward people.
Exactly. And so they're just digging all of this up, and clearly they're like, oh, people like when Ellen's mean. Let's try and find examples. So they've got this one where it's Sean Hayes, who's from Will and Grace.
Will and Grace.
This is the show that I've been on.
That's right. How long now?
Longer than 15.
Yeah.
No, it was
How long was it the first time around before y'all got canceled?
I think it was longer than your sitcom was.
How is
That's funny.
How is there anything mean there? And then people get really mad because Ellen tries to get celebrities to tell her about their personal lives, which is the job of every celebrity interviewer on the planet. So Ariana Grande, for example, was like, oh, God, this is so crazy. I wasn't prepared. And people are like, poor Ariana.
Oh.
It's like, no. Then it was reported that the Ellen DeGeneres show had become the subject of an internal investigation by Warner Media following reports of workplace issues on the series. At the same time, a few high-profile people did come out and kind of back this up. And to me, this changes things. Because the guy who played Robert on Everybody Loves Raymond weighed in.
What did he say?
He said that any problems with the show come from the top. And he said, I know more than one who were treated horribly by her, common knowledge. And
Open secret.
He was on Everybody Loves Raymond.
He was lovable.
Yeah, he was interviewed many times.
Yes.
Then another actress, Leah Thompson, responded to that, saying, true story, it is. Then she came back in September and she opened her show with an apology.
Let's get to it. As you may have heard, this summer there were allegations of a toxic work environment at our show. And then there was an investigation. I learned that things happened here that never should have happened. I take that very seriously, and I want to say I am so sorry to the people who were affected. The truth is, I am that person that you see on TV. I am also a lot of other things. Sometimes I get sad, I get mad, I get anxious, I get frustrated, I get impatient, and I am working on all of that.
She obviously had to insert humour, and the humour was very innocent. So things like, I'm working on the bad qualities of myself, like my impatience, but it's hard because it's taking a while. Like those kinds of jokes.
Yes, well, she's a comedian and it's a funny it's a ha-ha show.
But then one former employee told BuzzFeed News, not only did Ellen turn our traumas into a joke, she somehow managed to make this about her.
That's the thing with apologies. You say I'm sorry and everyone's like, oh.
So it's about you now.
It's about you now. Wow, way to make it about you. And it's like, well, you did call me like...
And I guess Ellen was trying to respond to everything. Not just the staff allegations, but also Mrs. Butthole, you know?
Yeah.
Like she's trying to respond to all of it. And you're never going to do that perfectly. After the apology, ratings took a massive nosedive. Really bad.
You know, we talk about causation and correlation.
Yeah.
There is another factor correlating to the nosedive of ratings.
What?
What is it? She stopped dancing.
Oh my God, you're a genius.
I know. So people think it's the bullying, but it's actually maybe that she stopped because she'd have that cool guy who would like vibe up in the DJ deck.
Yeah.
Oh, does that guy hate her too?
Okay, that was awkward. In the monologue where she came back, she's like, he isn't going to be DJing anymore. Haha, fake DJ Dex. He's now my co-executive producer.
I don't get
it.
it.
But he's still sitting in the same spot. And it felt a lot like a direct public apology to him. It honestly really did. And I thought that was strange.
Weird.
I know.
Okay.
Then in May of this year, Ellen announced she was quitting because she thought doing the show wasn't a challenge anymore. That's what she said, but I think reading between the lines is probably that the ratings were terrible. There are also a bunch of other awkward celebrity interviews and pranks that people bring up all the time to say that they prove that Ellen is mean. There's a clip where she says Sofia Vergara's accent had gotten worse.
I mean, literally, you've been on this show for 10 years and your accent has gotten worse. How is that possible?
Well, it's a talent, you know.
It really
I've made
is.
a commitment with myself that I am going to be Gloria, very thick Latin spoken woman.
Thick Latin. Yes, you sure have. It's gotten worse and worse over the years. I can barely understand you.
You don't know if that was like something they discussed prior. You don't know if that's Sofia Vergara's shtick. I don't know if you can judge that. And then there's also the clip where she's speaking to Taylor Swift and grilling her about boyfriends.
Yep.
And Taylor Swift does not want to talk about it. And she keeps going and going and going. She also scares Taylor Swift a lot. And people get really mad about that.
Like prank scares?
Yeah. Putting this all in context, this wasn't Ellen's first cancellation. When she came out in 1997, and she came out on the cover of Time in an interview with Oprah. Oprah's always involved.
Adjacent.
And on her own TV show. ABC put a parental advisory warning on the show and then cancelled it the next season. And Ellen, in terms of Ellen the brand, disappeared. And it disappeared because basically her straight audience left and said she wasn't going to be relatable. And the gay audience criticised her for not being political enough because she said she didn't want to be the spokesperson for all LGBT
Can't
issues,
win.
And they're annoyed. Elton John even made a comment that she should stop talking about her sexuality and just be funny.
Okay.
And when you've been criticised by Elton John, that's ouch.
That is so ouch.
And she rebuilt after that. She came up with Be Kind, and where that came from was there was a young boy called Tyler Clementi, and he took his own life after being bullied for being gay. And so she adopted that philosophy, Be Kind, that was sort of in response to that, and that became her brand. And I do think it's an important reminder about how quickly we forget that this was one of the first openly gay people in Hollywood who paved the way for it to be acceptable and normal and fine for somebody to talk about their sexuality, but then not too long down the track, we're like, but she's a bit mean.
Because does be kind mean the same as be nice? Yeah. Maybe they're two different things.
I don't know.
Only a courtroom will tell.
Yeah. I think ultimately it shouldn't be about meanness, whether somebody is mean or not, because that's not criminal. Well, in our court it might be, but it's not a crime that you can be sent to jail for. But if there are systematic problems going on in the workplace, that should be the focus. And I think maybe everybody getting a bit distracted by Ellen being mean has actually been to the detriment of the people who actually had horrible experiences at the Ellen DeGeneres show with producers who most people don't know their names.
Counterproductive. I agree.
Time for charges and sentences. My first charge. I would like to charge Ellen DeGeneres with one count of being very, very privileged.
Yes, guilty.
I struggle with this because as somebody who doesn't have a lot of money, I feel resentment towards people who have money. But I don't know what I want them to do about it.
Well, it's not up to you because
My
you...
sentence.
Yes.
She has to sell one of her houses for charity. She has 3 houses.
I think that she gives a lot to charity.
I know.
I think she's a philanthropist.
I know.
You want her to do more.
Yes. And I think also it wouldn't hurt for her to go to prison for one night. And I say that because I also had the same punishment for Ilaria.
Yes.
Because I think it can't hurt. That is my first charge.
Okay. My first charge for Ellen. Pretending to be kind when really, sometimes, in the last 30 years, she was in a bad mood and maybe wasn't 100% friendly as promised.
Yes. Yes. Great.
Sentence. Ellen has to rebrand as a bitch. Hear me out. She can't really fail at it. And every time someone says she is failing, she can be like, well, you're ugly, so who's failing now?
So wait, but what's instead of be kind, is it like be bitch?
Yeah. And what she does is every time she's interviewed, so it's like Jimmy Fallon or something, she can be like, no one thinks you're funny. You just try really hard. But she prefaces everything with no offense, or afterwards she says jokes.
Yeah, okay.
Because that's bitchy behavior.
Yeah.
So that's her new thing.
Okay, I really like that. That's really smart for her.
Thank you. What's your second charge?
I charge Ellen with 1 count of forgetting she was invited to Dakota Johnson's birthday.
Yes. Guilty.
My sentence is she needs a better calendar system. She needs maybe it's publicly accessible, or maybe it's just clearer on her computer when her events are.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's actually a count of what I would call disorganization.
Yeah. Yeah.
My charge is being rich while also giving to charity. Okay. Hear me out. Speaking of Donald Trump, he never gave to charity and people ignored him for that. So when you're rich and you don't give to charity, your character is consistent.
Yes.
And people can't really say anything because it's checks out.
Yeah.
But for Ellen, she was rich but also pretended like she cared for poor people, at which point you must ask, if you care so much about poor people, why aren't you also poor? Correct?
It is hypocritical.
Is she guilty?
Yes. Yes.
I didn't get to a sentence. Okay?
This is the most several times. You've done this several times.
Okay,
You don't get
so
to
I
a
need
sentence.
a sentence. Is the sentence that Ellen must be poor in order to have solidarity with poor people, for example?
Maybe she should do that thing that YouTuber tried to do for a day where it's I'm going to live off $5 for a day. No, the YouTuber tried to do $2 but then got to 11 a.m. and was like, fuck
I
this.
need a coffee.
Yeah.
And then they got cancelled.
Yeah.
And it's well, why even try? No one wants to only have $2. No one. People want to have more than that.
It's
so they can buy lunch.
I guess maybe Ellen could be part of a think tank to rethink capitalism. I don't know.
Please help me with my sentence. Thank you so much for listening to Cancelled. We want to hear what you think Ellen is guilty of. Maybe we went a bit easy on her. You can go to the Twins Thoughts at Instagram, share your charge, share your sentence. We want to hear it. And if you could leave us a review, 5 stars, that would be fabulous. Everyone wants positive reinforcement and to read nice things. Thanks so much for joining us. Our producer for Cancelled is Rose Kerr. Our head of podcasts is Eliza Ratliff. If you'd like more of me, that's Jessie Stevens, you can listen to Mamma Mia Out Loud. It's like having your best friends in your ears 3 times a week. And that's 5 times if you're an M+ subscriber. Holly, Mia and I explore what women are really talking about, like if it's ever really okay to date a friend's ex.
No, it is not okay to date your friend's ex. I know because I've done it.
Was it worth it?
Serious boyfriend that I was with from 17 to 20 was my best friend's boyfriend.
Oh.
And then I dated him for 3 years and took me and my best friend 2 years to get over that shit.
Are you still best friends?
Yes. But we don't discuss it. We do not discuss it even now. It was bad form. My friend understandably was furious with me. My heart wanted what it wanted. I was 17 and selfish. I learned a lesson. Jessie Stevens, I learned a lesson. I would never do it again.
You can find Mamma Mia Out Loud in your favourite podcast app. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Mamma Mia acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.